Drafting a running back in the first round is definitely one of those things that can get all the talking heads very worked up, and honestly myself included to a degree. I definitely think you have to be careful drafting a running back in the first round. I think you have to just make sure that you're ready to compete if you are drafting a running back early. I think there's some examples where it makes sense. The Dallas Cowboys were looking to compete when they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, however the New York Giants were nowhere near competing when they drafted Saquon Barkley. The fact of the matter is, with running backs, they have a short shelf life, so you do have to make sure that if you're drafting one, you plan on being competitive in the next couple of years. And for the Raiders, with all the moves they made this offseason, they're clearly looking to be competitive next year by signing Trent Brown and Antonio Brown, and now with drafting Josh Jacobs, it's pretty clear that this rebuild was a one-year rebuild. While drafting a running back isn't always a perfect situation, I really do think that Jacobs is probably the best running back in the draft, and he's really the complete running back. I really am very high on Josh Jacobs. He can be effective in all phases of the game from the running back position, and of course one of those is passing. It's not totally infrequent that there will be a guy who tears it up in college, however can kind of struggle in the NFL, especially in terms of trying to catch the football. But I don't see Jacobs being that kind of guy at all. Like on this play, for example, it's going to be a cover one blitz, and basically what Alabama is going to be doing is having just sort of a rub route here. They're going to have a receiver run in that direction right there, and basically the whole idea is that he's going to kind of get in the way of the defender who's in charge of covering Jacobs. So now, as you see, the defender is not going to have to run in and not be able to take the angle he wants to take to try to catch Jacobs, who's currently right over there. The play works out perfectly, but of course, I'm not just showing this play to show a good play design. Look at what Jacobs does after this point. First, he makes a great catch on the run and turns his body very well to try to move over, then he runs over a guy when getting into the end zone. I mean, that's just as great as you can get. First of all, being able to turn your shoulders like that after catching the ball is no easy feat. He did a great job of catching the ball first and then turning over and still being able to keep his top speed and running very quickly. And then of course, how many players do we see just run out of bounds at this point? However, that's not in Josh Jacobs' DNA. He wants touchdown all the way, and he's easily able to run over that defensive back and get into the end zone. This next play is another good example of how he can be effective in the passing game. This time Alabama has two backs in the game, and they're going up against a cover one hole this time. So basically what's going to happen here is it's going to be a fake handoff to the bottom half of the screen, and Jacobs isn't even going to do anything except for just run his route straight up the middle. The concept behind this play is very simple. It's just try to get those defenders to go in. Typically it's designed to actually beat zone coverage, not man coverage. However, it can still be effective in a cover one hole like this, because basically what Alabama would want to have happen in a situation like this is have the defender who's in charge of covering that middle of the screen go in and bite on the play action, and then you can simply hit Jacobs who's past him. And one thing that makes this play work is how quickly Josh Jacobs is able to get to his top speed. I mean, it takes Auburn to right about now until they realize, okay, this is not going to be a run, this is going to be a pass, let's make sure we get back into our assigned positions. But Jacobs is just so fast, you have to make that decision so quickly, because now he's pretty much already on a line with them, and he's running at full speed in that direction to the left side of the screen. Tua's going to be able to easily hit him because he's very open, and he's able to also break a tackle and get into the end zone for a touchdown. Again, that just showcases how talented he is. Not only does he have that insane acceleration, but he can catch the ball, and he can break tackles when he's in open space. For the Oakland Raiders, I just love this move. Again, I'm so pro Oakland Raiders. I'm so pro what John Gruden has done with that organization in the past year and a half. I think he's gotten so much hate for every move he's made, but most of these moves have actually been really smart once you think about them. Again, it's possible it doesn't work out. It's possible Josh Jacobs will be a bust, but I highly doubt it. And not to mention, running back is definitely a position of need for Oakland. It's definitely something they could look to improve on, and so having a dominant guy like Josh Jacobs can really be effective. But not only that, but Jacobs really can be a true 3-down back. He can catch the ball, he can rush, and he can block. And I'll talk about his blocking in a second, but let's get into some rushing plays right now. Like on this one, what Alabama is going to do is have their center and both their guards have one-on-one matchups on the three defenders who are right in the middle of the screen, and then they're going to have another player along with a left tackle both block the edge rusher right over there. So since he's going to be double teamed, that's basically where the hole is going to try to develop, and they're also going to have the other receiver who's down to the bottom of the screen just run out to block somebody basically. He doesn't have an exact person to block, but he's basically going to block whoever is closest to getting to the play. So from here, Jacobs basically is going to try to run through that hole, and basically those two defenders are going to be the ones he's going to have to worry about. This is a play design that's designed for Josh Jacobs to get a few yards, and then they're hoping that Jacobs can turn it into more. That's basically what this play is designed for. It kind of goes to show how much confidence the Alabama coaching staff had in Jacobs, that they really designed plays like this that were designed for Jacobs' talents to shine. You wouldn't do this if you had a bad running back and a great offensive line, and Alabama does have a good offensive line, but they also have a great running back, which is why they're doing plays like this. But take a look at what's going to happen here. This play actually doesn't work out as well as you would want it to. Partially because a linebacker is actually going to read this play very well and sort of get into position and try to cover up that gap. So if Jacobs were to just continue running through the gap that he's supposed to run through, this could now mean that he could easily get tackled and only pick up a couple of yards. It was a good play by that linebacker to make sure he's in position. So take a look at what Jacobs is going to do here. He's going to abandon what he's supposed to do and actually break to the outside. It's something that young running backs like to do a lot because they have a lot of confidence in their abilities, and that is something that can actually come back to bite you in the NFL. So I'm not sure if I would say it's all positive or all negative, because you do kind of have to be careful on when you do it. However, this time it's going to work out pretty well. As of right now, he has 2 defenders right in his area, but he trusts himself to get around those 2 defenders. Basically, the key here for Jacobs is he's going to want to use his acceleration to run as far to the bottom half of the screen as possible to make this as difficult of a tackle as possible. And because he accelerates so quickly, he's able to easily stiff arm a guy out of the way and get into the end zone. A lot of people always credit stiff arms to you think your arm, you think that's what matters, but it's actually the footwork. You can't stiff arm a guy if he's right on you. However, if he has to make a tough tackle, that's what makes a stiff arm so much easier. One thing Jacobs is very good at is making reads and reading what's going on in a play. He does a great job at understanding what the situation is and where he has to run to. Like on this play, first things first, there's going to be 5 1-on-1 matchups across the board here against Louisville. It's 4 offensive linemen and then also a tight end who each have 1-on-1 matchups. From there, what they're going to do is send a left tackle basically out to block that linebacker who's in the middle of the screen. And then they can simply send Jacobs right up the middle and he'll have a lead blocker to try to pick up some yards and at least get the first down because it's 2nd down and 1. However, notice Jacobs' vision here. I think right now a lot of people will be looking sort of at that line. However, Jacobs is doing a good job of looking past the line. You can't block everyone, but he is trusting that the people who are blocking in front of him can make their blocks. He's going to do a good job of looking past them and looking to the unblocked man because you can't block everyone, and that's where the linebacker is going to be. He sees this, and so he's going to break down instead of just running straight through. It makes it almost an impossible tackle to make because you're in a bad angle and you really just can't tackle Josh Jacobs in a bad angle. And it's not just those types of situations that Jacobs can be effective in too. I actually think he really shines in those red zone or end zone type situations. Also 3rd down and shorts. Like on this one, basically the way this is going to work is that Alabama's going to have their left tackle and left guard each have 1-on-1 matchups, and Jacobs is just going to try to squeeze in between them. It's about as simple as it gets on this one. There's not a ton to break down honestly, but I wanted to show it because I think it does a good job of showing how quickly he can accelerate. I mean, this guy accelerates so fast. Acceleration is key in a running back. I'll take good acceleration over a good 40 time any day of the week. I don't care that you might have a top speed better, I care who can get through that top speed quick enough. The fact of the matter is, if you have to run 40 yards, well, it's probably going to be a good play anyways. And so as of right here, it's going to be a heavy blitz that Alabama is going up against, but look at how Josh Jacobs is just able to outrun all of them. There was also this play, where what Alabama is going to do is have their center and right guard double team that nose tackle right there in the middle of the screen, and then the right guard will get off that double team and then block a linebacker up over there. They're also then going to have their right tackle block the other interior lineman, and then they're going to pull a left tackle over to block the other linebacker in the area. So everyone in that middle of the screen is accounted for. There's pretty much not really a window right now. While everyone is getting accounted for, there's no real way for Josh Jacobs to run through. There's not really a key hole. And so what is Jacobs doing? Well, he's just putting his head down and he's going to try to run through it. It could be tempting for a lot of guys to try to break to the outside. However, that wouldn't work. There's too many Tennessee players who are around. He's able to just run through and get into the end zone, even though there was no hole, because the offensive linemen are able to just push the defenders into the end zone, basically. This might not be something you would necessarily want to do if this was just 1st down and 10. However, in a goal line situation, it's something that you can do. Here's another example of how his acceleration can help in a goal line situation. What they're going to do here is have their left tackle block the interior lineman right over there. Then they're going to have a tight end block another Georgia defender, and they're actually going to have their left guard block the edge rusher way over there. Not just that, but they have a fullback in the game who can lead block for Jacobs, so this should be an easy play for Jacobs. However, oftentimes in football, just things don't work out the way they're supposed to. Every offensive play should work on paper, however, sometimes they just don't. And here's a good example. As you see, what's happening right now is the fullback is actually taking way too long to get up to where he needs to be. He's looking for someone to block, but the fact of the matter is there's really no one to block right now because Alabama did such a good job of blocking their assigned men. But here's what I like about this play. What Jacobs doesn't do is he doesn't try to push the fullback forward at all. He doesn't run into the fullback. He basically just takes his time. Everyone's getting blocked well, so if someone does get off their blocks, then the fullback will be there to make a play. It's slower than they wanted it to, but that's okay because you want to get into the end zone. Jacobs has great acceleration, but this time he did not use acceleration to get forward because acceleration would have actually just been a bad thing here. Instead, he was patient, he waited for the play to develop, and he was able to get into the end zone that way. Really, that's kind of what I like. Football is sloppy sometimes, and I always like to look at what do players do when things go wrong. Because things are going to go wrong. Even the best players in the world are going to make mistakes, and things are going to happen. So what do you do when those things start to happen? This play will be a perfect example of that. First off, what you're going to see is there's going to be 6 Tennessee defenders who are right there on the line. This, of course, makes a ton of sense because it's 2nd down and goal inside the 5, so there's a very real chance it could be a running play. And it is going to be a running play, however, take a look at the handoff here. Jacobs is running to the left, however the handoff is looking like it's supposed to be going to the right. So now Jacobs is now in terrible position because he can't accelerate the way he would want to on a typical running play. On the right side of the screen, it appears as though there's two Tennessee players who are kind of unblocked, however that's actually not the case. There's an offensive lineman who's pulling over to the right side of the screen who's going to be blocking one of them, however the other player is unblocked. But despite that, and despite that hiccup that kind of made his handoff a little bit clunky, Jacobs is still able to take the handoff and run easily into the end zone. Okay, so I think I've established at this point that Josh Jacobs is a good running back. He can run very well, he can run in end zone situations very well, and he's good at catching the ball out of the backfield. But there's one more phase to the game, and that's blocking, and honestly, Jacobs is a very good blocker as well. Like on this play, Clemson is going to show blitz by having 6 men on the line, however 2 of them are going to be dropping back into coverage. So then what they're going to do is have the defender who's on the left side of the screen basically go right there to the left guard's left side of his body, and then they're also going to have their nose tackle basically run straight into the center. So in theory, this should now create a gap where that player right over there can run in between them. So if that works, this now means that Josh Jacobs is the last hope for Tua. Josh Jacobs is going to be the guy who has to make a block here. And since the gap definitely did move up, this now means that it's just Jacobs on a defender one-on-one. The Clemson defender is going to have to try to get around Jacobs. He's not going to try to just run straight over him, so what he's going to do is try to run through the right side of the screen. However, notice how Jacobs does a great job of getting low and laying a pretty good block. Again, Tua still did have to rush to throw a little bit, but it gave him just enough time for Tua to be able to make that throw, and it resulted in a touchdown. This play is another good example of him blocking. Basically what's going to happen here is you're going to take a look at that player right there. It's a similar thing to last time, where basically going to try to create a gap right over there that he can run through, so this now means that Jacobs is once again going to be the guy who has to make a block here. Once again, this plan works perfectly for Clemson, and now Jacobs has to pick up that defender. And again, what do you do if you're a halfback? You don't want to just block a guy straight up. You don't want to try to put your arm on his shoulder pad and your other arm on his pec. That's just not going to work if you're a halfback. Unless you have a 300-pound halfback, which most teams don't, you're not going to have your halfback just straight up block a guy. He has to just make one big move, but that's exactly what he's able to do. It gives Tua room to run, and Tua didn't end up getting the first down. However, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about Jacobs' block. And Jacobs did a great job. He took that player out of the way, which is what you have to do. One of the things I like about drafting a guy like Josh Jacobs is the fact that he plays for Alabama, so this doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body because they do have a running back by committee system. He's a tremendously talented player. He really can do it all, and I think he'll fit great in that Oakland Raiders offense. I mean, that Raiders offense is looking pretty stacked now, with additions of Trent Brown, Antonio Brown, and Josh Jacobs. I mean, Derek Carr definitely has some weapons to play with now. And I also think the impact of having a good running back can really be felt in that John Gruden offense, which loves to run the ball and loves to run a lot of play actions. I think it's a great move, and I think it'll be a huge addition to that Oakland Raiders offense.